moment my boss asked me to rewrite my life for 1 year, the office lights felt brighter than they had ever been, as if the truth had nowhere left to hide. I was standing in her sunlit living room later that same afternoon, the windows open to a soft daytime breeze, realizing that some decisions don't arrive loudly. They arrive calmly, with a smile, and quietly change everything. I had come in as an employee with a tidy routine and a careful heart. I was about to leave as something far more complicated. If you believe that kindness deserves second chances and that life sometimes tests the gentlest souls the hardest, take a moment right now to like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Midnight Tales. Stories like this live because of hearts like yours. My name is Jonah Mercer, and until that year, my life was simple in a way that felt safe but small. I worked as a project coordinator for a powerful, composed woman named Althea Cross, a name that carried authority even when spoken softly. She was respected, admired, and endlessly judged. In the daylight world of boardrooms and charity luncheons, she was expected to have a perfect family image, to secure a legacy donation that would save her late mother's foundation. The truth was messier. A recent divorce had left her vulnerable to gossip, and the foundation's future was suddenly hanging by a thread. The solution she offered me wasn't born of manipulation, but desperation. And desperation has a way of sounding reasonable when spoken gently. We agreed on rules that were meant to keep our hearts protected. The arrangement was public: daytime dinners, appearances, smiles for cameras, and shared spaces filled with sunlight and careful distance. No lies beyond what was necessary, no emotional entanglements, no crossing invisible lines. I moved into the guest room of her large, warm house, where mornings smelled like coffee and lemon polish, and afternoons echoed with quiet work calls and the ticking of a clock that seemed to measure more than time. At first, everything felt like a performance rehearsed in daylight. We attended events where her hand rested lightly on my arm, and people smiled at us with approval that felt unearned. I learned how lonely admiration could be by watching her navigate rooms full of people who needed something from her. I learned how heavy kindness could feel when it was never allowed to crack. During long afternoons, I watched her sit by the window, reviewing foundation files, sunlight tracing lines across her face, and I realized that power didn't protect her from grief. It only hid it better. The real challenge wasn't pretending for others. It was pretending for ourselves. In the quiet moments between obligations, when the house settled into a daytime hush, the walls seemed to listen. I struggled with guilt, with the feeling that I was borrowing a life that wasn't mine. I missed my small apartment, my routines, the freedom of being unseen. At the same time, I found myself caring in ways that broke our carefully written rules. I noticed when her shoulders tightened from stress, when she skipped meals, when her voice softened while speaking about her mother's dream of helping children through education. Everything began to change the day the foundation hosted an open house fundraiser. The building was filled with light, children's artwork, and the hum of possibility. Althea stood at the center of it all, composed as ever, until a board member questioned her integrity in front of donors, hinting that her personal life made her unfit to lead. The air shifted. In that moment, I saw not my boss, not the woman who had hired me, but someone standing alone under scrutiny. Without planning it, I stepped closer, not for the cameras, not for the deal, but because it felt wrong to let kindness stand unguarded. From that day on, the pretending thinned. Daytime walks turned into real conversations about fear, loss, and the strange comfort of shared silence. I told her about my father, who had taught me that doing the right thing rarely looks impressive. She spoke about her mother's illness, about promises she was terrified of breaking. We were still careful, still restrained, but something honest had entered the space between us, something warm and frightening. The year pressed on, marked by ordinary mornings and extraordinary moments. We celebrated small victories in daylight kitchens, shared lunches on park benches, and learned how trust grows when no one is watching. The foundation stabilized. Donations flowed. The whispers faded. With every success, the end of our agreement crept closer, and with it came a quiet dread neither of us wanted to name. On the final day of the year, the house felt different. The sunlight seemed softer, slower, as if time itself was reluctant to move forward. The contract had ended. The obligation was gone. I packed my things knowing that walking away would be easier than admitting that somewhere along the way, the act had become real. That the kindness I had offered had come back to me, transformed into something that felt like home. Just before I reached the door, Althea stood in the living room where it had all begun, the daylight wrapping around her like forgiveness. There were no rules left, no audience to convince, only a choice that belonged to us alone. In that quiet moment, I understood that love doesn't always arrive through grand gestures or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it grows slowly, in borrowed time, in shared responsibility, in choosing to stay when leaving would hurt less. If this story reached something tender inside you, if it reminded you that healing can come from the most unexpected arrangements, please take a moment now to like, comment, and share this video. Your engagement tells us these stories matter, and that hearts like yours are still listening. Before this story ends, I have one special request. Comment the word hope if you believe that kindness, even when it starts as a favor, can turn into something real. I didn't leave that house as an employee or a pretend husband. I stayed as someone who had learned that love isn't about perfect beginnings. It's about choosing honesty when the pretending is over, and trusting that daylight is enough to see each other clearly.